Okay, so we are in the middle of eclipse season right now. And if you're going through a lot and like a lot of stuff is coming up for you, that's actually totally normal. And you're kind of on track with what's really supposed to be happening energetically when we're in between two eclipses. Let me break it down for you. We just had on September 17th the lunar eclipse, or excuse me, partial lunar eclipse in Pisces. And then on October 2nd, there's going to be the full lunar eclipse in Libra. Now, I'm not going to get into too much about that, but it's actually the in between that's really important here. During eclipse season and in between eclipses, it's supposed to feel kind of weird, okay? And intense. This is not a time about manifesting and setting intentions and trying to call stuff in. It's actually a big time of releasing. And the number one thing I want to say, if you feel like things have been coming up for you that you thought you moved on from a long time ago, or things that are very, very deep and things that you have been working on, releasing and letting go of and completing and ending patterns for a long time, and you feel especially vulnerable, especially sensitive, especially triggered, like more so than ever, and you feel like, man, did I just totally go backwards? Like, what's wrong with me? That's not the case. What's actually happening is you're in the last stages and you're really ready to let it go and complete and end these cycles. This is a time of endings. So if things are kind of abruptly changing right now, it's important that that happens. It's definitely for your highest good, even if it might feel uncomfortable. You're being kind of ushered by your own higher self in the universe to get into position for the next stage of your life. So a perfect example is if you're going to give birth, when you're pushing and the baby is about to come out, you know everybody kind of knows this story. You don't have to have actually been pregnant and given birth to understand what it means, but those last pushes before birth can be some of the most painful. Birth itself is very painful. It's not, an enjoyable experience, but it is creating life. It's bringing life into the world, and it's very necessary for this beautiful new beginning. But a lot of times right before you're about to go up to the next level, think of it from a video game perspective. If you're, they put the hardest boss at the end. When you're at the big boss level, that's the last level. It's extra hard. It's not easier. That's the whole point. Video games is such a great analogy because they don't make video games progressively easier as you get to level to level to level to level. Now, that doesn't mean that your life gets harder as you level up, but it is a good example to understand this one particular moment in time when you are doing a final clearing of an old pattern, an old belief system, an old story, something that you know is not serving you anymore. You've been working on trying to heal this trauma and let go of this and effectively jump timelines. When you're right there, it's like you're fighting the big boss. It is the last time. If you've ever done a cleanse, if you've ever done like a gut reset or a candida cleanse, the same thing happens with your own microbiome. If you have, candida is like the not friendly yeast, they fight really hard right before they're about to die. You get all kinds of symptoms. You might feel like you have a fever, just like if you go into ketosis and you're fasting, there's a certain spot right before you go into prime fat burning where everything's like fighting for its life to survive. Your fat cells are like fighting for their life to survive. So you start to feel like sick and crazy and all this stuff. So, the luteal cycle is very similar as your body is about to shed, to prepare for menstruation. That as well, your hormones start plummeting, you get emotional, your energy's up and down, like you can feel so intense. And all of this, we have these biological examples to show us, and then we even have our video games to show us that right before the big release, the big surrender, the letting go, sometimes when you're fighting your own resistance the hardest, or the programs, the patterns, the things that aren't really you, the beliefs that you've created and let just kind of snowball and take over, are dying. Actually, they're getting ready to go, but they don't go down without a fight. At the same time, though, you can think of it like if you want to clean dirty water, you have to let the debris either go all the way to the bottom and filter it out from there, or rise to the top and filter it out from the top. So the things that you don't need anymore, that don't, align with you, that don't, I don't remember right now what the word is for, it's something that is water soluble. It's not part of your, it's not meant to be part of your system anymore. It's going to filter up to the top, and the top being your awareness. When that happens, it's because it's actually not you anymore, and you're really noticing how much you're done with this, how much it's really not you, how uncomfortable it is, and how much you don't want it. So this is the time to be very gentle with yourself, be very loving, but also be very firm, and know, okay, this stuff is coming up for me right now because I'm actually really completing it, and I'm actually really letting it go, and I actually really don't need this anymore. Or I am very open to letting in new ideas. If you feel like stuff is just crazy and you're so bothered, you're just so bothered, let yourself be all the way bothered and just let it be the last time. And make peace with that. Make peace with that old pattern. Make peace with that old belief system. Make peace with that part of you that keeps going to the same watering hole that is toxic, and you never feel quenched. Your thirst is never quenched every time you go to that watering hole, but you keep going there. This is the time for you to actually to get frustrated, to understand and see like, wow, this just doesn't work for me anymore, and it doesn't feel good, and I don't want to feel that way. Step 1. Step 2, lean into it and allow yourself to just be kind to yourself for a moment and acknowledge the journey that you've been on, acknowledge the steps that you've taken to get here, and give yourself a moment to just, as peacefully as you can, and I recommend during in between eclipse to do a lot of self-care. If you can be in the heat, sweat, cleanse, get a massage if you can, just play healing music that makes you feel good, and lay on the floor and imagine. You don't need to spend a dime to do this. Just imagine anything that you have really been struggling with, and all these old things that you're just so ready to move on from, and isn't you anymore. Just imagine it like floating off of your body, and let it sink down into the floor, and let the earth take it for you. Because what you're clearing now is, for a lot of people, things that you've been working on for years. And don't take it like, oh my God, I've been working on it and look, I didn't make any progress. You've made a ton of progress, and you're here in this moment because this is the last piece. This is the time when you truly can let it go. And it's like everything, that last piece, I'll put it this way, it's the last piece, and it's so intense because you're at the source code, which is when that belief or that trauma or that pain or that hurt was first implanted in your system. So it is very potent. It is strong, because that's why you created this pattern anyways, is because you felt it so intensely, and a whole spiral spun out from that you may have been cyclically working on for decades before you even knew that it was necessarily an issue. So you're at the bottom. And when you're at the bottom in that first moment of when it was created, there's a lot of power in that, and it will feel very intense. Put a lot of love into that, and then gently lay it to rest, because once we're through this eclipse, what comes next is wide open spaces for you to experience basically the opposite of that trauma, the opposite of those limiting beliefs and those pain. And you're not going to have a lot of information there. So you're going to have an open field and a place of curiosity and discovery about what's happening next, things that you haven't experienced yet. So it's very exciting and beautiful. So try to stay in the anticipation of that, and be as gentle with yourself as possible as you are completing these cycles now and really learning to let go all the way. So much love, and happy eclipse.